Let's go, people. We're recording, which is great, because this is our last week before the break. My hair looks like it needs a bit of a break, which is great. So we're going to do that all together. Having said that, it is the last week before a break, but we're starting a new topic as well. So let me try and share my screen. The fabulous new topic is dun, 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 not my emails. 1 second. Oh, this one. It's miracles and the way Hashem runs the world, miracles and Hashgacha. Now, the problem is, and let me just get to the top of it, close to the bottom of it, which starts as follows. Okay, so I would start as follows. Can everyone see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's start with the following. All right, there's the start of it. So miracles and Hashgacha, meaning the way Hashem runs the world. There's so many ways to deal with this, so many ways. We're going to do a little bit of a snapshot, which is going to take a couple of weeks, but it's only a snapshot, meaning if in our journey we've done, which we have, Hashem's existence, our free will, reward and punishment, doing mitzvahs, purpose of the world, this really should have slotted in a bit that stage. We then went on and did why the bad things happen to good people and challenges. It was just a juicy topic, so we did it first. This is, I would say, the last topic in terms of Hashem's running the world, what we call Hashgacha. So in Hebrew, the word Hashgacha means to oversee, right? In other words, when you go ask an eatery whether the product has, or the restaurant has Hashgacha, that means Mashgiach means someone who's overseeing the kashrus, right? And as someone Hashgiach means to oversee, that's still to this very day, modern Hebrew, that is so. Um, Part of Hashem running the world, or as we would say, part of axiomatic Jewish understanding, is that Hashem runs the world. Yeah. Now, what I mean by that is Hashem runs the world, meaning Hashem didn't just create the world to let it slide and let it go and let it be driven by itself, like self-driving world. And Hashem has constant involvement in the world, such that, and we'll have to work this out, such that there are constantly what we would call miracles. Now, miracles, as we'll see, we have to define them very carefully because there's different categories of miracle. There's what we call open or closed or supernatural and natural. We'll get into that. But as we'll see also hopefully this evening, that doesn't detract from the fact that Hashem values the natural rules of the world. In fact, so much so that he's put them in motion. In fact, so much so, there are a vast number of commentaries who say that God doesn't like to disturb or interrupt the natural ways of the world. Why? Because since God put them here, he feels there's something we can learn from them here. Right? In other words, all these rules, the reason why the world looks like this or is has all the various natural laws, there's a purpose, there's a reason, and ultimately we're supposed to learn something from that. In fact, the Gemara actually goes as far as to say that had we not been given the Torah, or before the Torah was given, I forget which one, we would learn certain things from the natural world. We would learn certain things from the natural world. Now, obviously, the Torah changed loads of that. You're not going to be able to learn, I don't know, the laws of Shabbos from the natural world. Quite intricate. But principles you could have garnered from the natural world, and therefore Hashem doesn't always interfere. Now, I say interfere very, very sensitively because it's not proper interference, meaning Hashem created those rules. Yeah, it's like, when my kid says, "Can I?" We had this the other day. What was it? Can I? I'm taking some of your money to buy you a present. Yeah. So it's slightly fiscally circular, but they're not really interfering with the money because it's my money and they're buying it for me, right? That was a nice iteration of that example. There are many others, especially involving kids and using parents' money. But point being that God, when we say Hashem is interfering with the rules of nature, obviously He put them there in the first place, right? So it's not like two different powers clashing. It's all what Hashem decides. Okay? But nevertheless, there's a meaning in the routine. All right, so let's have a look. The first thing is, and this is the Rambam, the Torah as well, that the world was the world isn't, I would say, self-running or self-governing, meaning the Torah itself is full of the fact that our actions will impact the world. Now, I don't mean impact the world, meaning you'll impact other people. I mean the world. You know, the tochacha, the rewards and punishments are full of the fact that if you behave, in other words, if we are, sorry, charging, make sure my computer is actually charging, it's full of the fact that if we are loyal to Hashem, then the world will react in a certain way, right? You know that's again that's axiomatic. And similarly, if we misbehave, then again the Torah or the world, the Torah says, will react in a certain way. Right. So for example, there's a Rambam over here, which Gideon's going to read out as oh no, it's okay. The plug has managed to go in. But Gideon's still going to read it out about the mitzvah to fast. In fact, the mitzvah to sound the trumpets on the fast day. All right, you want to read the top, Gideon?
Positive mitzvah to cry out to Hashem over every tragedy. Anything that pains you, such as famine, plague, locusts, and the like, cry out about them.
Okay, keep going.
This matter is one aspect of teshuvah. By crying out in prayer when a hardship arrives, it is apparent that one's bad deeds were the cause of the hardship, and this acknowledgement will also cause the hardship to depart. However, if we do not cry out, instead attributing the hardship to the way of the world and chance, this is insensitivity and causes one to strengthen their connection to the evil ways and further tragedies. And this is what the Torah says.
Okay, in other words, I'm going to take the punishment out of there because I'm nice. No, because that's not the operative point. Obviously, there are consequences to our actions, but the point is that the world is reactive to our actions, for good and for bad. Right? When the Torah says, if you misbehave, I'll kick you out the land, that's not metaphorical. That is a well. When the Torah says you behave and you'll get grain and rain in the right time, and that's not metaphorical. Metaphorical. That's very real. Okay. Now the next element over here, once you've got Hashem creating the world for purpose and thus constant involvement in the world, albeit with room for free will and etc., as we discussed previously, got this very interesting phenomenon that we like categorizing. Right, Gideon, I'm now going to make your son famous on YouTube, the millions of people that watch this, right? If your son was categorizing chicken schnitzels, yeah, I'm sure because he cares about them, he'd have different ways of categorizing them, right? If you ask my kids to categorize chicken schnitzels, it could be they can come up with, I don't know, thick crust and thin crust, and then they're stuck. Right? Why? Because they don't care about it, or they're not as clued in about it, or they're not, whatever it is. Right? You
Wait
know,
till they go to yeshiva.
Pardon?
Wait till they go to yeshiva.
There you are. The truth is, actually, my kids would probably at one point say, does vegetarian schnitzel count? And they might get away with it. And the one with corn inside, is that a different type? Be that as it may, we categorize the things that we're mad about. You know what I mean? In other words, the things that we care about, we categorize. Yeah, that's kind of the standard. Any industry, by the way, valuing music and art and architecture and sports, you know, there's nothing worse than watching a football match next to someone who has no idea what's going on, right? And they kind of just broad categories, right? And start saying, oh, look, that player, he did well. Right. Whereas the football expert next is saying, "Oh, that was a type of pass or whatever it was, you know, etc." He was running off the ball to get the guy. You know, he understands the game much better, or she understands the game much better. Right. So the more we care about something, the more we categorize. If you want the classic Jewish examples, and I'll give them to you, actually not Jewish, the classic examples that rabbis tend to give are that in Alaska, in such snow-filled territories or Greenland, there are many different words for snow or ice, right? Because that's what they're used to, right? They say, and I'd like to test this, that in the communist East, there are many more words for shades of red than blue, whereas in the capitalist West, it's the other way around. We're not going to test it, but have it after the share. See if you can think how many shades of blue can you think of versus red. We once did this. We had got into a big argument about whether denim counts as a type of blue. Big argument. Unclear, very unclear. Anyway, okay, so we too care about miracles because we care about Hashem's interaction with the world, and therefore we have different categories of miracles. I mean, they're not all the same, right? So let's have a look at how those work. Effectively, there are two, maybe three different types of miracles. I've got the English right up on the screen, which is as follows. You've got your open miracles, meaning nature shattering, such as an example of an open miracle.
Red Sea.
Pardon?
Looking of the sea.
It's really easy, not just because I went like that, right? Okay,
I
good.
was looking at ChatGPT, identifying whether or not it is true that the Inuit have multiple words for snow.
And the answer is
Slightly true, but
slightly true.
yeah, they have. Anyway, whatever. I'll send you the answer.
Nice. Meaning slightly true because there are not many native Alaskas that use ChatGPT and input
No, it's because
information.
it's different types and conditions of snow. So, for example, they've got a word for falling snow, and they've got a word for snow on the ground. They've got a word for drifting snow, but it's still really snow. It's just what's happening to the snow.
I
Anyway,
mean, it's not different consistencies of.
yeah, the popular idea that Inuit have 50 words for snow or 100 or 400 or whatever is misleading. So, yeah,
Yeah.
slightly true.
Let's move on. I think you're skating on thin ice, Gideon. Okay, so yes, okay, so we've got our revealed miracles like supernatural, meaning splitting of the sea. Great. Pesach as well, generally. Then we've got our hidden or concealed miracles, namely
Well, that there says the Purim story.
Purim stories. Yeah, just checking
Yeah.
for reading. Yeah, Purim story. In other words, these are miracles that are embedded within nature. Right? In other words, they defy the odds, they're against the odds, there's clearly direction, sequence, and purpose, but at the end of the day, they're embedded within nature as opposed to shattering it. Now, there is a big debate as to which is more important. Right? Interesting. Now, which is more powerful? Or if you like, what is supposed to be leading to what? Yeah, let's keep it at that. In other words, is it a the revealed miracles, as the open miracles, are they more powerful? And as Pesach is better than Purim, so to speak? Well, no, actually, the hidden miracles are that which are more important. What would you say?
I'm going to go with it. It depends.
It depends. Yeah, they're both important.
Go on. What does it
They are
depend on?
both. I don't think one can be more important than the other, but they can have
I,
different outcomes depending on what they are.
I'm going to suggest it depends as follows, slightly different to Sue. I'm going to say that open miracles are important when you're trying to establish the kind of concept of miracles at all. Like, I think there's an idea that you had to have those open, crazy miracles to show how God is in control of everything. And so, if you're looking at that, then the open miracles are important.
Right.
But if you're looking at how God runs the world, and I think you were alluding to this earlier, how he wants to run it in these natural ways. That's when the hidden miracles are more important.
Good. Okay, Sue, were you saying that vastly different?
No, not vastly different, I don't think.
No?
And
Okay.
the other thing, of course, is that seeing is believing.
Yeah, go on.
So, on that basis, most of us would accept that if we can see it, we know it happened. If we can't see it, if it doesn't impact on us in any way, then that makes it very much harder.
Very good. Okay, good. Excellent. Yeah, 100%. Meaning, yeah, that I'm putting it together with Gideon, actually. The truth is, the Chavetz Chaim, I'll put it in story form. The Chavetz Chaim at one point had to see a doctor. Can't remember what the story was. And the doctor, in mid examination, asked the Chavetz Chaim, how do you know the Torah is correct? You know, it was given years ago, like, well, God, why doesn't God do miracles now to prove himself? That was actually truth is more that's the way he asked it. If your God is true, he should do a miracle now, right? So the Chavetz Chaim said quite bravely, given the doctor was mid-examination, how do I know you're a doctor? Right? To which he just lost his NHS membership clearly. How do I know you're a doctor, right? To which the doctor said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, how do I know you're a qualified doctor? So he says, well, look, there's my certificate on the wall. So he says, Chavetz Chaim said, oh, I mean, that's very nice. That's from 25 years ago. How do I know you're still a doctor? So the doctor says, well, excuse me. He says, you only need to qualify once, and that's when you prove your credentials, and then you're good to go. Right? So the Chavetz Chaim said, yeah, that's how our God works. And I said, he only need to prove his credentials way back when, and now he's all right. Yeah, now obviously there's more to that, which why doesn't he help us in terms of emunah by providing miracles? But the point is that there are various authorities, the Ramban among them, who say like this, you don't need to prove the doubters or the philosophical deniers, so to speak, wrong in every generation. You don't. You don't. You just need to one or a couple of open miracles and you're good to go. Right? Hashem performs the big miracles, the open miracles. We'll learn this Rambam, please God, in order to open our eyes to then see the small miracles. In other words, certainly if you go with our purpose within nature idea, within the way the world works, obviously with Hashem's constant involvement, the goal is not to be witness to the big sea splitting and the plagues and etc. And that is a way of reminding us, as you said, that God exists. And now you get back to working out God in your daily lives. And there are many iterations of this, actually in the Ramban's commentary, but generally, where there'll be flashes of inspiration, and then you kind of come back and then work it out for yourselves and use that. But if you're constantly accompanied by flashes of inspiration, in other words, the big miracles, then you're basically on divine life support. If you can only believe in God when he does the big miracles, that's a bit of a problem. Right, so you've got that. So even though the bigger miracles look more powerful, and they are, and they shatter nature, some say, to summarize this, that they're just there to facilitate our recognition of the smaller miracles. Others go further and say the smaller miracles are actually even more powerful, not just more purposeful, more powerful, because it's one thing to break nature, it's another thing to manipulate nature. In other words, in
you're saying that open miracles are big miracles and hidden miracles are small miracles, and that might not be the case either. Just because it's hidden doesn't mean it's. How do we define what's big and what's small?
Right, 100%. 100%. Yeah, totally right. That's what I was saying just before. It could be that actually hidden miracles are bigger not by virtue of the fact that they, we associate supernatural with amazing and right. It could be that the natural ones are bigger to an extent, and I don't mean further reaching. I just mean more powerful because you are subverting nature from the inside. In other words, in espionage terms, to I don't know, rain down missiles on something, against all odds or whatever, that is something, right? But that's amazing. But if you're using the enemy's weapon as a tool against them, that's even more. Whereas if you can create a double agent, that's even more powerful, right? So the Vilna Gaon says, I believe, that the hidden miracles are more powerful because you're not just smashing nature, you're subverting it, using it from the inside, right? That's even more powerful. Okay, either way. Some say, this is an amazing thing, there is a higher level of miracle, which is what's called an inexplicable miracle. I made up that term, meaning even supernatural miracles, and there's debate amongst the commentaries, but even supernatural miracles, they have to be explained. In other words, for example, Daniel was thrown, no, he wasn't. Actually, he was into a lion's den. I didn't mean the him, though. It meant Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, his friends, were thrown into the fire. Right? They were thrown into the fire. They survived. That is a supernatural miracle, right? 100%. Now, how did they survive? So you could say it's a miracle. The Reb Sadigan says no, there was an angel there, Gabriel, and he actually that particular whatever he cooled down the fire. In other words, the supernatural element wasn't inexplicable because once the fire is cool, it can no longer cause trouble. Right? So obviously it is supernatural because fire normally isn't cool, but at least the elements can be explained in a natural way once you've added the supernatural ingredient, namely the cooling down of fire. Yeah. The plagues in Egypt, none of them were incomprehensible in their supernatural natures. The fact that all the animals came for the plague of Ara, the wild animals, of course that's ridiculous. How could they possibly come? That's a miracle, right? But you're still not inventing new species, and they're not the lions aren't flying on top of, I don't know, clouds, etc. You're still within the natural world, albeit it being a supernatural phenomenon, right? The top level of miracles is where it's totally incomprehensible, right? So, for example, over here it says the Aran, which occupied no physical dimension, right? There's literally when you measured it, it didn't take up any space. Or over here, the blood, that you have the same thing that Jews and Egyptians drink, and they're different types of, right? They're different types of liquid. They're not just switching between them, that would be supernatural. Here, it's the same thing, two people tasting them, two different impacts. Right? So that would be called then totally above and beyond type of miracle. Okay? Let's see if we can quickly do one or two more small points. which is like this. The Ramban says, and he's talking about why miracles, why the Torah doesn't mention the world to come. The Ramban says that reward and punishment generally are hidden miracles. Right? In other words, reward and punishment generally are whatever. They tend to be hidden miracles. As they look like nature playing its course, it's not kind of supernatural. Yeah. Okay. One other. Let's go. We're officially at 10:30. I'm going to take one more minute because I want to share with you this sort of Sadigon.
I don't know which time zone you're in, but we're in 8:30.
What did I say?
10:30.
It's 10:30 in the Southern Hemisphere.
It's 10:30 in Israel, and that's what counts.
10:30 in Israel.
In fact,
by the looks of your backdrop, you're not currently in Israel.
No, I can't possibly believe you wouldn't actually mark your time with Israel time in general, to be honest. I'm personally shocked, you know.
I thought there was a wider principle that literally everything is a miracle, and the only reason we don't think of it as a miracle is because we see the sun rise every day at whatever o'clock.
Yes, but again, those are miracles that Hashem has set in play. That's why I didn't want to get too caught up on the word miracle. It could be you could say there's a Odessa about this, although it's hotly contested. Basically, everything is a miracle, and there's no reason that anything should be occurring in any fixed way, other than the fact that Hashem wills it.
Yeah, and wasn't there a famous story about someone who didn't have oil for Hanukkah Shabbos candles, and they just lit the water? Because
we're going to learn about him. Yeah, we're going to learn about him. Don't worry. Oh, he's coming. Okay. So just this last bit of Sadigon, which he says like this. He says Hashem doesn't change anything. Right? So rewind. Hashem only performs miracles having prepared the people to do so, like validating prophecy. Without doing that, then Hashem has no reason to do an open miracle. In other words, miracles have to achieve a purpose. That's Sadigon's point. Otherwise, the default is normal rules, as the normal natural world. Miracles that, for example, validate a prophecy, as the prophet says there's going to be such a miracle and it happens, that's a reason to have a miracle. Right? Various other things, to punish or to reward, reasons to have a miracle. Without having a reason to do a miracle, it's not just miracles. We don't just randomly have miracles. In fact, some people say that you have to have a prophecy before a miracle happens, at least in prophetic times. Right? As the Torah will not record, but better, Torah will not record a miracle which wasn't precipitated by prophecy. Anyway, that is that so far.
How would for example, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah be classed? Are you saying that moves it outside of miracle? It's just like Hashem's like.
No, Hashem told that to Avraham. That's good enough.
You mean that's the prophecy element, and therefore the miracle can happen? Saying.
Yeah, I probably misrepresented it slightly. I think it's more rule in prophecy than miracle. In other words, a miracle. Recording. The Torah only records the miracle if there's a prophecy beforehand. This the Ibn Ezra writes, or the Ramban writes, because he's bothered by, and just finished with this. The Ibn Ezra asks, wasn't it a miracle? Yocheved, if you do the maths, gave birth at like a ridiculously old age. Like she was the one who came down. She was born as the Jews entered Egypt. So she gave birth years later. She should have been really old. Why don't we count that why doesn't the Torah write that? He says because no prophet predicted that. There's no prophecy directly about it. Okay? All right. Please God, we're going to continue next time. So we're going to continue, please God, the end of August. I will send out a reminder at some point. Emetz Hashem. That will be the plan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.